So to introduce us, I'm Abby Nelson. I work for Las Cumbres Community Services. I'm a developmental specialist. And with us today is Camille Westcott. She is an occupational therapist, and she's been working for Las Cumbres for how many years?
15.
15. She actually worked with my kids when they were little. So that's pretty awesome. So now we're working together. This is part of our Ask a Specialist workshops, and we're very excited to have everyone here. And Camille, do you want to introduce yourself?
I think you covered it. I'm an occupational therapist. I've been working for Las Cumbres for 15 years. I guess I have 2 kids of my own, but they're teenagers now. Oh, and I work at PT Plus too with Las Cumbres. You know, our kids 3 years old and younger, and I work with older kids at PT Plus here in Los Alamos also.
So Camille, why don't you tell us what is occupational therapy? Because I have to tell you, when I heard about occupational therapy and that my child needed occupational therapy, I was like, my kid doesn't even have a job. Why do they need occupational therapy? Like, I didn't know what that was. I'm like, is that how you type? Like teaching kids how to type? I didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that confuses a lot of people, and people ask that a lot. Like, what's OT about, and how's that different than physical therapy? And I think about occupational therapy, it's about what occupies your time, not necessarily your paid occupation. So for kids, that's playing, eating, you know, the things they do in their daily life. So if a kid is having trouble with meeting their milestones, which is similar to physical therapy, or having trouble with sensory processing like we're talking about today, a lot of times it can be fine motor skills like writing, dressing, that type of thing. So, but yeah, as an overall thing, you can think of it as the things that occupy your time. That's what we help with, which can cover a lot of things. It can be, occupational therapy can be called the jack of all trades.
I love that, actually. I think it's such a great, concise description of what occupational therapy is. Also, remember, if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And if you don't feel comfortable putting it in the group chat, you can send it either to me or to Camille. So today we're going to talk about sensory integration, about sensory play, and what that is. And I was confused about that when they talked about that for my kids. And the way I like to describe it for people is it's the information we take in through our body. Like, those are our 5 senses, you know, the sight, touch, hearing, all these things. So all these different senses that come into, you know, our bodies and how we sort of feel the universe around us. And there are things that are, you know, universal things that we don't like, things like scratching on like the chalkboard. The nails on the chalkboard is a universal, everybody hates that sound. But there are also, you know, and we as adults are really good about how to manage the sensory stuff that we take in. If there's a sound we don't like, we make it stop. If there's music we don't like, we turn it off. If there's something we love to listen to, we listen to it. So there's different ways we know how to manage ourselves, but kids, they aren't sure quite how to manage their universe. And so it's sort of up to us to help them, you know, learn how to manage that.
Yeah. And I guess I want to break it down a little bit more, sensory processing, how that works. So I like to use hearing as an example. We know we'll check a kid's hearing, we know our hearing's good. So we know that information's getting to the brain. So the next step is registration. Like, do I pay attention to that noise or do I not? And I always think of like my 3rd grade classroom. I don't know why this sticks in my head, but every morning, the ticking of the clock, when the classroom finally calmed down, that would really stick out to me. But after a couple minutes, I was blocking it out. My brain decided it wasn't important anymore. So registration is does your brain decide to listen to it? And kind of the opposite of that is I would always get in trouble when I was watching TV and my mom would call me and my brain would not decide to pay attention to her voice. It did not register. And so I would always get in trouble when my mom called me when I was watching TV. So that's the registration part. And we all see that with kids. Like, sometimes we ask people, do you think your kid has a problem with hearing? And people often say, well, they have selective hearing. And that's that registration part. Like, your brain just doesn't even tune in sometimes to things that are happening because it just decides that's not important enough to pay attention to. So the next part is, after the brain does register, what do you do about it? How do you react to that information? So there's the appropriate reaction, and then there's overreaction, and then there's underreaction. So there's a whole spectrum of how we could react to the information we hear, or, you know, all our senses. So an example I thought of is like, I hear a crash in the other room. It's possible that doesn't even register for me. If I was really into a show, maybe I wouldn't even hear it. But if I did hear it, the appropriate response would be to go and see what happened and take care of it if it needs something to happen. Or if I'm overreacting, I'm gonna run out of the room screaming, "What are you kids doing?" You know, that is the overreaction, you know. And some days are like that, right? We're just at the end of our rope and we're gonna overreact to things, and that's okay. And sometimes we underreact, and it's like, well, I don't know, whatever, I heard it, but whatever. And the kids have to come and say, "Mom, I'm bleeding, help, call the emergency room," you know. So there's that whole spectrum of reactions there.
Another great one is like things like just even the doorbell. When the doorbell rings, if you're expecting someone and you say, like, if I tell my kids, okay, I'm expecting so-and-so at the doorbell's going to ring. The doorbell rings, they're not going to run to it. If it's unexpected and the doorbell rings, they're like, who's at the door? And all my kids will run to the door, and I'm like, no, it's fine. It's so-and-so. They're dropping something off for me, you know, and especially during COVID, because they're like, people, you know, they get very excited, you know, because there's like, someone's here. And so my kids just react and they'll run to the door and they get very excited, you know. But if it's, you know, something they're expecting, it's like, not as important. So they're able to filter that out. It's like, I can ignore that. And sometimes if they're watching a show and the doorbell rings, they will completely ignore it.
Yep, definitely. Abby, will you bring up the Pooh Bear slide?
I would love to. I love the Pooh Bear slide.
So this is just an example of, I'll talk while Abby's bringing it up. This is just an example of the kind of like different personalities, how different people respond to life. And it uses Pooh Bear characters as illustrations of what that looks like. So here we go. I often wish I had the energy of a Tigger, but Tiggers don't always catch everything. So the top half of this are people who need a lot of stimulation. So Tigger and Eeyore both need stimulation, but they have different responses. Tigger is out there getting everything he needs, like, I need more. And Eeyore is that bump on the log and like needs somebody to get him going, right? He needs it, but he's not getting it. So the bottom half are the people who are more sensitive. We can definitely see that with Piglet. Like, he tells us he's sensitive and he's nervous and he's anxious and he's not ready for everything in life. With Pooh Bear, that's a little harder to see because he's more passive about that. You can see that on the arrow, that he has a passive response. It's like, I'm really distracted. I can't really focus. There's too much going on, but I'm not really gonna let you know that that's the issue right now. So we are, you can take that off now, Abby. Hopefully everybody had enough time to look at that. And you guys can always let us know in the chat if there's stuff you want. If you want some of the information that we shared today, you can share your email and we can send you out the examples we used and the handout type stuff. Anyway, so we're going to talk about today different things, different activities you can do in your life that can kind of help so sometimes we're overstimulated, sometimes we're understimulated. We want to get to that just right place. So those were Tigger and Eeyore are more the understimulated, and Pooh Bear and Piglet are the overstimulated. We want to get them to that just right place so they can react, take things as they come, learn, and focus and be ready for life. So that's mostly what we're going to talk about today.
And one of those things is actually, especially like for school, like you have kids who might be very visually distracted by all the things on the wall. They might be very, you know, or they might, you know, need all that, you know, visual stimulation to get them excited and get them going to learn at school. or it might just be like, this is too overwhelming, there's too many people, and they become overstimulated by it. So it's the different needs, but there are ways to sort of mitigate that.
Right, for sure. So in OT, when we work with kids that have sensory processing issues, we talk about a sensory diet, and that can be a confusing thing because it sounds like we're just talking about food. And, with food, with your diet, you try to get a balance of nutrients throughout the day. With the sensory diet, it's getting a balance of sensory input throughout the day. So, sitting on Zoom all day is a great example. Like when I have several Zoom calls in a row, like I love to go vacuum. I love to go take the dog for a walk. Like I need to use my muscles because I've been sitting too long. So that's my sensory diet. Like I know I need to move after being on 3 to 5 hours of Zoom calls. So that's what a sensory diet is, just fitting in throughout the day, those little pieces that help us get to that just right place. And I don't know.
It's different for every person too, because every person has different sensory needs. And every child has different sensory needs.
Definitely. Yeah. And I don't know, I saw a lot, for a while it was in the news, that studies had shown that when you exercise, it improves your mood. And for even depression, that exercise can improve your mood as much as medication in some cases. And that's true for everybody, even if you're not depressed, even if you don't have a mood disorder, like exercise, moving, doing these sensory activities are things that are going to get you feeling okay. So we're just going to go through the different senses and give some examples. And at the end, you can bring up examples from your family too. So let's start with touch. And my favorite thing is deep pressure. Deep pressure is calming, and it brings you to that just right place, whether you're overstimulated or understimulated. It doesn't matter. If you can't tell if they're being Eeyore or Pooh, it doesn't matter. Deep pressure brings you to that just right place. So deep pressure means anything where you're getting squished. So everybody loves a massage, right? That is something that really calms you. But with our kids, we can do fun stuff too, like getting out the pillows and making a pillow fort, and using pillows and pretending they're a sandwich and the pillows are the bread, and squishing them and saying, okay, we're putting on the mustard, we're putting on the ketchup, or rolling them up really tight in a blanket like we're making a burrito, or after a bath, wrapping them up tight in the towel. Those are all great ways.
This is really beneficial for those kids who need that sense of those tiggers who need to jump and move, and they need that input in their body because they need to just get those jumping and those bouncing. This really, that deep pressure squishing really benefits those tiggers because it gives them that without the need for bouncing around, and it can actually reduce that need for them to be bouncing around.
Exactly. Yeah. And a lot of times when kids are bouncing off the walls, as we say, it's because they're feeling really scattered. And when we do that deep pressure, it increases the body awareness. It helps us feel pulled back together again. I mean, we use those words and they really are literally true. Like we're feeling scattered and we need something to help us pull back together again. And deep pressure really does that. It helps you pull it together, feel calm and focused. So
and it also helps the who's the one that's the quiet one, Eeyores, like to wake them up, because you're giving them that deep pressure. You're really activating their body, and they're really able to see, to feel, sort of waking them up again. So the deep pressure actually is one of those that really works for the whole spectrum of sensory.
Exactly, that's definitely true. Yeah. I was going to say something else about that, but I lost it. Anyway, so the other end of that is that light touch is really alerting. So for kids that just can't get enough, the light touch is something they really enjoy. So that is more like getting in the rice bin, or I think about older kids sometimes when we want them to get up in the morning and they won't get out of bed. those heavy blankets on them are really helping them stay asleep. So just taking off the blankets, doing some like light touch, it's time to wake up. Those are the things that are really going to help us get going. So I'm trying to think of all the different situations that come up. Light touch isn't popular in my family. We don't, and one thing I wanted to talk about with light touch is, this is a hard thing to talk about because everybody thinks that tickling is really fun. And I have not talked to a lot of people who honestly really enjoy being tickled. So I really advocate for, instead of tickling your kids, you know, doing the like, I'm going to get you pig pile thing. I'm going to get you bear hug. I'm going to get you crash. Like those things are just as fun and get just as many laughs and real enjoyment and connection, where the tickles a lot of times are like, ha ha ha, I can't stand it. Ha ha ha, I hope this stops soon. You know, it's actually a much more enjoyable thing when you get that deep pressure in there and avoid the light touch. Although there are kids that definitely love the light touch and are asking for it. And it's great to go with what your kids are asking for. I love it when kids can communicate what they need. That is a really important thing. And if you feel like your kids aren't telling you what they need, then help them articulate that. Like if you see that hugs really help them calm down, help them see that, you know, like, oh, come here, let me give you a hug. I know that's going to help you feel better. Actually, we're going to do the video now. Let's watch the Cake Smash video. Abby found this wonderful video.
I love this video. It's such a great example of allowing your kids to sort of explore, you know, food and just explore different, you know, sensory stuff. So touching things. Let me share my screen real quick. Thinking. I just really love that example of allowing him to explore his universe. And I love how at first he's really unsure. He's like, what is this on my hands? He's wiping it on his pants. He's wiping it on the floor. He's like, get this off of me. What is this? They just really allowed him to sort of explore it some more, introduced it some more. And then he starts, I love the part where he just starts exploring with his hands. He starts touching it and really like, oh, that feeling. What does that feel like in my hand? And he's really like, and then he's exploring with his mouth and he's tasting it. And, you know, and parents, obviously, you know, there was a break and they put it in his mouth a little bit so he could taste it. And then so they really introduced this to him. It was a very, organic process of just allowing him to sort of explore this cake. And it was really very, very fun to watch. I love this example.
Yeah, and I think it really is a good example for this question that came up. How can we combine sensory play and solid feeding in babies 6 months and up? Ways to encourage parents to let babies and toddler be messy while they're learning to eat. So this was really beautiful. And, it's hard for us when kids get messy and we don't want to clean it up. So like setting this up outside when it's a warmer, sunny day, if you don't want to deal with that mess inside, I often encourage people to do it in the bathtub. And it's easier for the kids too, because if they don't like having that mess on their hands, they can immediately put their hands in the water, get it off, and move on to trying again. And they feel a lot safer when they do it in the bathtub. So I hope that answers your question. You can ask a follow-up question if I didn't really get to the core of it for you there.
There's definitely that. Yet, like as a parent, like I hated, especially if you have lots of, more than one kid, it's dealing with that mess at meal times is really difficult. And so if you're planning in your head ahead of time, we're gonna have a messy time, and I'm just gonna let them play. Even one of my favorites to introduce a kid is canned peaches. Canned peaches, they are sweet, they are, and they're squishy. So the sweetness encourages kids to put it in their mouth, and it's a fruit, right? But there's that squishiness of them, and just sort of letting it go and just like, we're going to do bath time right after meal time, and have them in their high chair in just a diaper, and just accept that that's going to be a mess and it's going to be okay. So those are one of my favorites, is fruits, anything that they can sort of like squish in their hands. And for some kids, you might have to even just make that an example and show them how to do it. And get moms or dads in there and squishing those fruits themselves.
Yeah, and I think it helps to know you don't have to do this like every time you sit your kid down to eat. You can set aside a time once a day and just be like, okay, this is our sensory playtime. It doesn't have to be all the time. Let's move on to taste. And I was thinking about when I would pack snacks for my kids for school, when they were little and when they were older. One of my kids liked to put stuff in their mouths, whether that was something that's supposed to be in their mouth or not. So I really had to pack foods for that kid that were very alerting, that gave lots of feedback. So the kind of foods that help give lots of information, lots of sensory information, are crunchy and chewy, spicy and sour, gives those like whoosh in your mouth. Putting ice in the drinks, that cold gives you extra information in your mouth. What else? Our very favorite snack is pretzels and lemonade, because you get that crunchy and salty and sour and sweet, and it's just like something that wakes you up and makes you feel more ready to go when you're kind of dragging.
I have the opposite with my kids, who are overreactive to things. So I would have to pack things that I knew would be comforting for them. That's things like peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. It was something that they knew. The peanut butter is nice and smooth. I had to do, white bread, the really soft, so things that were really comforting to them, because they became overstimulated by school, because there's just so many people and so much noise and so many things going on, especially at lunchtime, because at lunchtime there's so many people in one room and it's very noisy. So I packed things that were very comforting. So fruit snacks, very chewy, very, things that were very comforting to my kids. So that's what I had to do for their lunches. Yeah. So, and you learn as a mom, what comes home and what doesn't.
Right. Yeah. And for the other examples, like kids, there's, like you said, your kids would get overstimulated, and some kids that would like lash out at school or cry a lot at school, like they're like that piglet, right? Like everything is getting on their nerves. So having those calming snacks, like you said, the peanut butter and jelly or yogurt or pudding, mac and cheese is so popular, because we know it's smooth and creamy and consistent, and we know what to expect in every bite. And that's why mixed foods are hard for kids, because they don't know what to expect in every bite. That's why casseroles are challenging, because you might get broccoli and you might get rice the next time, you know, and you don't know what to expect. So those are the things for, oh, and bitter is the other one that's really alerting, like broccoli, spinach, those things that adults tend to like more than kids because our sense of taste isn't as strong as kids. And smell, I think people know a lot more about smells than they used to. So we talk a lot about lavender with our kids, right? We can get lavender bath products and lavender lotion and lavender bedtime stuff. We know lavender is calming for sure. I don't know if vanilla is as well known. Like when you think about the smell of cookies baking, that really lovely feeling, just smelling cookies, that's that vanilla.
And we all have those favorite smells. If you ask people, you know, what do you love? Everyone loves the smell of bread baking, or I love the smell of rain on the hot street, that petrichor smell. I love that smell. And everybody has smells that they find calming, that, you know, brings them down, or they have smells that are universally unpleasant. You know, there's skunks. That is really activating, like, you know, and you smell, when you smell it, you know. But then there's kids who are even more sensitive, and even like the smells of like laundry detergent, you might have to get ones without any scent if your child is especially sensitive.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's interesting to know about smell is it is the only sense that goes directly to the brain. Like everything else goes through the spinal cord. So you get the most immediate reaction from using smell. So if your kid is really flipping out, like having that lovey that has a little bit of violet on it, or vanilla, or rosemary and sage are really good too. So if you use that in your cooking, that's another calming thing for the foods. So that smell can really like get that faster settling.
Well, they make those aromatherapy necklaces now, where they have a little like pad inside where you can put an oil on. I use that for my daughter, so that at school, you know, she'd have her little smell, and it was for calming. You know, that was calming for her, and I let her choose it. I let, you know, and these are for older kids, obviously, not the toddlers. So, you know, for her, it was, you know, so she was in middle school was when we did it. And that was because middle school, stressful, let's be real, for everybody. So it was something that was actually very helpful for her.
Yeah, that's a great example. And so again, I'm going to go to the other side now. And I'm thinking of the kids like have a hard time getting going in the morning, or can't get started on homework or whatever. So I think cinnamon is like the really popular one in the morning, like cinnamon rolls and cinnamon toast. And we use a lot of cinnamon in my house. That's one that's really alerting. And citrus and mint also are ones that are really great to get you going when it's hard to get started. They even make an aromatherapy alarm clock. There's some people that can't wake up to their noisy alarm clock. So they do make alarm clocks you can put oil in, and that smell can wake you up in the morning.
Is there a bacon one? Because that would get me out of bed. Like, I'm gonna be real. Like when my husband makes bacon, I am like, okay, I am up. That is the smell that gets me going. Like the other ones, I'm like, but bacon, that'll get me out of bed.
Okay.
But also things like, you know, having them drink a glass of orange juice in the morning. When we drink orange juice in the morning, it's very, you know, it wakes you up. It's that smell of orange juice, and it's very, you know, activating in the morning to get you going.
Yeah, definitely. All right, let's go on to sight. So one of my kiddos too is really big on novelty, and that's what I thought about with the vision part. So when I was a kid, I liked to rearrange my bedroom all the time, and I realized now, like, I needed that novelty. Like the monotony was too much for me. So making things different, like if your kid has a hard time sitting in their high chair for a meal, maybe change their view, put them on a different side of the table, put something interesting in front of them. And I think another thing that's important is like rotating out the toys. Like we have this set of toys, it's getting old, they're not playing with them anymore. Then take some out of the closet, get rid of those ones that they've been playing with, And just that change of not having to see the same thing all the time can really help kids focus longer.
It
And
also reduces the mess. So for moms who are like me, who I can't stand clutter, I need things like, especially when the children were small, there was enough chaos with the children. So I'd have out, a certain number of boxes. And then when they'd stop playing with them, I had some that were, hidden away in the closet. And then you bring them out and it's like new toys. They're brand new, even though they just haven't seen them for a few months. Mm-hmm. So that's always, it reduces the clutter, and it also keeps the kids excited about the toys that you have. Like if you've ever brought out toys and gotten ready to give them away, but the kids haven't seen them in a while, all of a sudden it's their favorite toy because they haven't seen it in forever and it is brand new to them. Yeah. And so that's the, it's that novelty of having it new, like you were saying, Camille.
Yeah. And I think of another example for sight is long car rides are always hard with little kids. And I think the vision toys are really good for that, like the oil and water toys where you turn it over and they mix together. And that's something a little kid can handle easily and can hold their attention for a little bit longer in the car. Oh, and Abby, you were going to talk about how light really affects your family.
Yeah. So, some people really, everyone has those different sensory stuff. Some people really I like my windows open. I like lots of light. I love, because it just makes me feel that, feel better. And then there's people like me. I like light blocking curtains in every room of my house. So I can open the windows if I need to, but I can close them. I remember one morning, my husband, he was up. I was still in bed. It was Saturday. So I was off duty until about 8 a.m. And the kids were just bouncing off the walls because my husband really likes lots of light. He loves it. He opens all the windows, all my dark curtains, and he opens them all, and and the kids were just having tantrums. So I got out of bed. I closed all the curtains, and I turned off the light, and I put out some toys. And all of a sudden, my kids went, ooh, and they just calmed down. No fighting, no crazy tantrums, because I have kids who are very sensitive to that light. It's just too much. It's too much in the morning. They need to ease into it. And so some people really like that. I need lots of light. That's the, and that calms me down. So it's different, recognizing the needs of different kids. And then I went back to bed after I did that. So
yeah. All right. And then we're going to talk about hearing. And you might know that the speed of music, when you listen to music, the speed of music can actually change your heart rate. It can change how you're feeling. And lots of people use this when they exercise. When you're listening to fast music, you bike further, you run further, you can go faster. But the same thing works for kids at home. I know lots of people do dance parties. And when it's witching hour and everybody's crazy at night, you play some music and you dance it out. But it's important to remember too, like when your kids are having a hard time settling down and you need them to chill, like playing music that has that slower beat. And of course, lullabies just naturally are like that. A lot of kids' songs are naturally that slower music. And it's anything that's like 80 beats per minute down to 60 beats per minute is just going to help everybody in the house chill out, calm down, slow down.
I really like when my kids were little, we would do at night the Baby Einstein videos, because it had very slow, very quiet classical music. Mm-hmm. And then it has a few things that go across the screen, right? But it's not super overstimulating. It's not, very exciting. It's very calming. And so this is when my kids were very, very little. It was just something to calm things down. And if you're like me and you can't sing a lullaby 50 million times, use a video. There's no judgment from me, because sometimes that's an easier way to do it, and that's fine. And also on the flip side, music, there are so many very active music videos. Like I love the Lori Berkner Band. Mm-hmm. They have some great music with dinosaurs and stomping, and it's very, getting your kids moving, and you can do it with them. If you're not a person who wants to sing, songs to your kids, videos are out there and the music's out there. And if you ever have any questions about different like ideas for music, we've got lots.
All right, and then let's talk more about movement.
So I did want to say about hearing, though, also okay, that there are kids who are hypersensitive to sound. So if you notice that your child hears everything, there are these kids who they hear everything around them. They get upset by normal noises, things like the vacuum or the blender, and you have to sort of adjust and like warn your kids beforehand. So that's something to watch for, is if they're hypersensitive to those sounds and noises.
Yeah, definitely. All right, with movement, I think everybody knows rocking is something that's calming. So anything where you're moving like in a straight line forward and back is calming. So swinging in a swing is forward and back. And if you're holding your baby too, that's forward and back for them. That's what's going to be calming. But if the kids that are bouncing off the walls need extra stimulation, so that's when we want things that are unpredictable. Like when they're swinging, you want to stop them and surprise them and start again and stop them. And that unpredictability really gives the nervous system a big rev, and it helps them calm down if they need extra stimulation. Being upside down, spinning, those are all ways that give really intense movement for those kids that are just all over the place and they need more.
And also so the heavy work, heavy work's another really great one for those kids who are very, moving around a lot, and need to sort of, bring it in. And that's the same thing as like the hugs, but it's pushing. You have kids who like, they don't want to ride in the stroller, they want to push the stroller. They want that information in their bodies.
Yeah, right. And the heavy work is something just like the deep pressure, that whether your kid's overstimulated or understimulated, it's going to bring them to that just right place. So, we're mostly talking about fun, playful things, but this is where the chores come in. Like even when your kid is little, they can push the laundry basket across the room. They can help bring in the groceries, something little. They can help carry their diaper bag as they get bigger. Just given those, they love to do those little things like throw their diaper away. We want them using their muscles as much as they can because that helps them stay regulated and get in that just right place. Heavy work.
I have a son who right now gets very, when he's sitting all day in front of the computer doing schoolwork, he needs to move and is not getting enough in his body. So I say, and he's old enough now that I say, go run a mile. I also have I know like the medicine of slam balls. Have you ever heard of these? They're like, I have it right here because we use it. This is an 8-pound one. And I actually make him take it outside and throw it down on the ground 20 times. And I make him lift it over his head and slam it down on the ground 20 times. And he comes back in and he's calmer. Just because it's that work information in his muscles that he needs.
Yeah. So then the great thing with little kids is you don't need that much weight. Like they say like 10% of their weight maybe is a good to work with. So, if they're picking up your little dumbbell, that's okay. If they're just pushing the chairs up to the table, it just can be everyday things. It's really
throwing a ball, kicking a ball.
Just using their own body weight.
Yeah, a lot of kids like baths for that reason, because baths give a lot of touch everywhere on their body. So a lot of kids really like, and they're calmer after baths. Oh, what's the ball called? I don't know. I don't know what brand this is, but it's a slam ball is what they're called, these balls. And so, but they also make smaller sensory balls for kids, but that's, any ball that has like nubbies on the outside, anything that's, fun to hold, squishing, those like, what are those little foam squishes? Those are great. They, people call them stress balls, right? And it's because it is you're giving that information, and it's on a smaller level, but for little kids, it's really great.
Yeah, and for toddlers, I really like Play-Doh. That's a really good way to get some heavy work and use those muscles and, you know, strengthening the muscles of the hands at the same time. And some fun things to do for heavy work are like tug of war, pushing each other, the wrestling kind of stuff, building a fort out of pillows and the furniture and whatever's
Jumping
around.
on a trampoline. Trampolines are great.
Yeah. So, and one thing I just want to mention is there's, in occupational therapy, it's coming out more, people talking about the internal sensations. Like sometimes kids have a hard time knowing, and even adults can have a hard time knowing too, like, am I hungry? Do I need to go to the bathroom? And they have a hard time interpreting those internal sensations. And doing that heavy work and that deep pressure, all those things that help you feel the body better, those really help with those internal sensations. And if you see, like with potty training, for example, the kid just is not noticing that they have to go to the bathroom, that is a sign they need more of those body sensations.
I had a daughter who was like that, who she under-registered, and she didn't register when she had an accident. And to work on that, what we did is I would put her in the bathtub after an accident and just splash some cold water on her. Not as like a punishment, but it just as a sensory shock for her. And it was, oh, it's so nice to be warm and dry. And, you know, we did it during the summer. So it's like, oh, it's so nice to be warm and dry. It's warm and dry. You know, it was all very positive, but it made her, woke up her body a little bit, and she registered, oh, something's wrong. This was an accident. And I, you know, and that actually really helped. It really helped her to figure out, you know, that, you know, feel when she had an accident.
Right. So the one other thing we wanted to talk about is, you know, looking at the sensory motor preference checklist that we did at the very beginning. I'm sure you realize that there are things that work for you that don't work for other people. And there are things that other people do that drive you crazy. Like I remember when I was in church as a kid, my sister would always shake her leg, and that's how she would get through church and pay attention. And the whole pew would be shaking, and it was not working for me, you know? And when my kids were little and they would get out their flutes and making those high-pitched noises on the flute, it just made me insane. So we had to figure out a way for them to get what they needed and me not lose it. So usually it was like, go to your room, shut the door. So what the important thing to think about is, you know, when your kids are doing stuff like crashing into the wall or climbing up on top of the refrigerator and doing stuff that are making you crazy, they're telling you, this is what my body needs. And if it doesn't fit your rules, then you have to find a new way for them to fit that need so that you're not constantly clashing. So if it's climbing up on the refrigerator, that's not working for you, it wouldn't work for me. You know, you have to find some place where they can climb and it's okay. Take them to the park every day, buy a climber for your backyard, a little toddler climber for inside, make the pillow fort that they can climb on. You know, there has to be a place where you can meet. Yeah.
I used to call going to the park for one of my kids, I used to call it his medication. We had to do his medication twice a day. It was going to the park so he could climb and he could move and he could dig and he could get all that, you know, all that out. And then he was a much, much nicer child to deal with. And otherwise he was extremely frustrated. And, you know, he would tease, he's my teaser. He would tease people when he's, you know, but when he'd go to the park and he'd get all that information, that really worked well for him. So we have another question here. How do we encourage kids who don't want to? So kids who are avoiding it, how do we get them to engage in sensory play if they are avoiders, if they want to avoid that sensory? I actually had a son who was extreme avoider, like in terms of food, in terms of, you know, touch. He didn't want to touch dirt. He didn't want to do anything. And my best recommendation is make it play. You have to make it fun and you have to engage with him. Nobody wants their child to come inside covered in mud unless you have a kid who is a sensory avoider. So when we had a big mud puddle, I actually went out with the kids And I started playing with it myself. And which is very strange as an adult, by the way. So you're sitting there and you're playing, and I was just playing. And then I touched him with it. And he was like, what's this on me? And I was like, no, it's fun. And then I got him excited about it. And then he got it on and his siblings were in it. I love siblings for this stuff too, by the way, or peers, getting having a friend come over and doing it. Cause it's just that example. It's that, and watching you have fun with it. It's like, oh, maybe that is fun. And if they're not ready to start with mud, because that's pretty extreme. Bubbles are slimy. It's a slimy feeling. So starting with something like bubbles is fine. If you want to start, and Play-Doh is another one that's, there's a little bit of a residue. So a lot of kids won't like to touch that. So start easy and make it fun and do it with them. If they're really little, you can do things like, like even just playing with their food. That's sensory play. That's a great introduction, and making it fun and doing it with them, and not making it a bad thing. Like, oh, don't make a mess. Don't throw it on the floor. Just accept that it's going to happen and expect it. And then it's not so bad as a parent to have to clean up later. So like, if you accept it beforehand, it's okay. Just get them naked for mealtime and just go with it and make it fun and make it play. Anything, like, because I always think that anything in play is the most beneficial and makes the most difference.
Yeah, definitely. I think another thing to think about is what comes beforehand. So if you are doing some of that body work we talked about before you do the really challenging things, doing lots of squishes and wrestling and pushing and pulling, then that really sets up the body for more success. It gets it to that more comfortable place where they're ready for a challenge. That helps a lot. And the other thing I think, or a couple other things that I think help is using the kids' interests. So if they're totally into Thomas, making train tracks through some slime or whatever it is you're working on, or, through the rice, having Thomas pieces in the rice bin or whatever their interest is, incorporate that into whatever the challenging thing is that you're working on touching. And then the other thing that occurred to me is when kids see other kids doing things, they're more likely to do it. They'll follow an adult, but they're way more likely to follow a kid doing something. So if they have siblings or friends, cousins, whatever, and they see them doing it, it's way more likely to happen.
I totally agree. I think siblings and peers are one of the best things for encouraging things, because they say, oh, this person's my size and they're doing it. It seems okay. They seem fine. So maybe I will be fine too. So that's a great one.
Yeah. And I saw a question, when should I seek help from an OT for sensory issues? That's a really good question. The way I think of it is when it prevents you from doing things. So if your kid is always hanging back and doesn't want to play with the other kids because it's too chaotic, or they won't get into it because things are too messy, or like every day getting dressed is just a nervous breakdown because it's so hard for your kid to get used to the clothes when they change.
Or the socks. I had that, my hypersensitive kid, anytime there was a wrinkle in his socks, it was breakdown city. And it was, you have to take all the shoes off and then put it all back on correctly. And then, make sure there's not a wrinkle in those socks, or else that is the end of the world. So that was definitely one that was like, nope, that's excessive. That's an excessive thing. So we probably need to address that. Mm-hmm. So those are the times when you're like, maybe that's too much.
Yeah. And I know that I've seen research that shows that almost everyone who has anxiety also has sensory issues. So I really feel like addressing early sensory issues really sets up kids for more success in life when they have ways of coping, and we can rewire the nervous system so things aren't so challenging. Then it really reduces that likelihood of having problems in the future. That's why early intervention is such a great thing. We address things early and things are so much easier down the line.
So there's another question in the chat.
As a parent who's relatively new to these concepts, how do you recommend better diving into sensory play to start without fully understanding what our child's preferences are and what helps them the most? My son loves baths, dunking things into water, playing with kinetic sand, watching steam train videos, but he also likes to just sit back and watch and observe. Okay. Those all sound like really great things. I think just watching out for new opportunities, like when it rains, playing in the mud, and doing that food play is okay once in a while, but we're not going to do it all the time.
And it's also keeping an eye on it and recognizing what they like and what they don't like and what they avoid and what they gravitate to. And I mean, and you as a parent, you know your kid better than anyone else. You know what kind of foods they like, you know what kind of, and what kind of foods they do not like. And they tell you, and they tell you in different ways than we tell people, because we can, as adults, we are usually pretty good about saying, I can't stand when someone is crunching in my ear and I want to punch them in the throat. Or, I really love the sound of the rain. So we know that what we like as an adults, but kids, they will tell you in different ways. They will say refuse foods. They will avoid, playing in the mud because they don't want to touch it. Or they will play like crazy in the mud and get totally covered head to toe in the mud. So they will tell you through their preferences. And it's what to watch for is if things are overwhelming for them, if they're going to have a breakdown. Because a lot of times you'll see kids, it's like you go to take them to a party and they don't like it and it is overwhelming and they start breaking down or they start avoiding it. So that's, things to watch for, or they really like it. And that is something they really enjoy and they're really crazy and they love it. And then afterwards they're very calm. So it's this watch for, you can watch and observe your child's behavior in different situations. And I love this down there. So if you do have any more sensory questions, you can always go to our Las Cumbres website, and there's an Ask a Specialist. There's the link that was just shared in the chat box, and you can, if you do have any questions about maybe my child's sensory integration is not typical, you can give us a call, and we are happy to do evaluations and talk to you more about it.
Right, and there's a form on that website too where you can ask for more information. Let's see, Abby, we had that chart changing alertness levels that you were going to put up, just kind of as a summary, kind of to pull it all together again. You can look at that.
So these are things that you can do to change how you're feeling. So eating hard candy, eating crunchy foods to sort of wake you up, moving, walking, running, doodling, sitting on a therapy ball. A lot of times for kids who need to move, they'll actually recommend sitting on a therapy ball for classes. Touching things, rubbing things, so for a lot of kids, like they need something to do with their hands. Or we as adults, I mean, some of us already do that stuff, like playing with a pencil or tapping a pencil or jiggling your foot. So these are different methods of changing, like, say you're in the afternoon when you're sort of dragging a little bit, things that wake you up. It's when you want to eat the chips. That's when you want to eat the hard candy. That's when you want to stand up and move around to sort of wake yourself up, drink something cold, have your afternoon coffee, to sort of wake yourself up. So things like that. So those are different ideas. So if you could, we'd really appreciate your feedback. If you'll click on our little feedback link. If you click on it now, then it can come up on your screen and you can leave some feedback for us. We'd really appreciate it. Our next, and you can also check our website for other upcoming workshops that we have going on. Our next workshop is going to be in
April 9th, communication milestones.
So we're going to be talking with a speech therapist who will be Teal Radford, and she's going to be joining us to talk about speech milestones, and that's going to be a really good one. So, and also again, any questions you might have, please feel free to go to our website, ask us questions. We're always happy to talk to you.
Thanks for joining us today.